PettyPrattle.com presents the Dirty Talk Podcasts, your podcast home for all things soap and more. Welcome to From the Basement, a special edition of our Dirty Talk podcasts, where we focus on the hit TV show from NBC called Found. Now, the reason this is a special edition is because we're going to use one episode to discuss all of season one and get you ready for our weekly podcast, which we'll be discussing each new episode as it drops. So we are your hosts, Angela and Toni. And do we ever have a treat for you?
This show is amazing, Toni.
It's so good. And it's so addicting.
I was one of the few people who started watching it and didn't know that she had him in the basement until they showed it at the end of the first episode. I was gobsmacked. I was totally blown away, and I was so happy after that I hadn't watched any of the promos or read any of the 9 million articles that said it. Friends, teeth. They're like, how could you have possibly not known that? I was like, luck is what it was, because very rarely are we surprised, but that one just knocked me on my ass.
The thing about it is, even knowing that was the premise, they did such a great job of pacing the first episode that even knowing it, you kind of forget. And then all of a sudden, you just get hit in the chest with it at the end of the episode. Wild.
Yeah, it was.
But anyway, we should probably start by giving a general preface for what the show's all about.
Yes.
The show is about a Black woman by the name of Gabrielle Mosley. She goes by Gabby. And she works to try and bring home the special interest groups who don't usually get a lot of attention when they go missing.
Marginalized, yes.
Yeah, if they are of a darker melanation, if they happen to be a part of the LGBTQ, just anyone who usually will get a sprinkle of attention and then disappear. Those are the type of people that she moves to help get home. Because quite often the media likes to sensationalize certain demographics. And she herself, from experience of being kidnapped, knows what it's like to be forgotten. And yet she got lucky and was able to save herself and quote unquote be found. So because of that, she's made it her life mission to be the voice and be the eyes to help find those others like her who go missing.
Yes.
Now, Gabrielle Mosley has a team with her. The first member of the team that we meet is Don. Tall, beautiful, light caramel brown skin, beautiful man. He is her muscle. He is to be Indian, possibly. But he's gorgeous, tall, slender, strong, aggressive. Makes my heart go pitter patter upon first sight, and broke my heart later, but it's fine. As long as he's happy. The first time we actually meet Gabrielle, she is, I believe we get to see her in action for her organization.
Mosley and Associates.
Yes, Mosley and Associates. And so she goes, she at first she seems like a victim herself. She's in the skimpy little outfit. She's talking about how her Uber driver, tried to attack her or something, and she got out, but they took all her stuff, and she has no phone, no ID, nothing. And she comes up to the door of this elderly white man in this like very industrial kind of old warehouse looking thing, and begs for help. And once he realizes she's got nothing and no way to call for help, he's like, oh yeah, opens the door for her. And that is when we find out that she was playing Buffy. Like the supposed victim that's actually there to be the hero.
Yes, she is
So
trying to get inside because he has someone else.
yes. And she's there to save a little boy who has gone missing. And so she gets in, she threatens him with violence if he doesn't, work with her. And he's like not scared of her because she's shorter than him, looks petite. And while she did get the drop on him, he doesn't figure that she's got more than that in her favor. What he doesn't know is right behind her is her backup, Dawn, who busts in the door and starts beating his ass while she runs off to go find the cute little boy that's gone missing.
Mm-hmm.
That is when we are introduced to our next member of the team. Would you like to introduce our next member of the team?
Who did we meet next? Wasn't it
Our hacker, our resident hacker and
Zeke was the next
financier.
one we met? Okay, so Zeke, played by Arlen Escaparta. I'm probably mispronouncing that last name, but it's okay. He is a computer ninja aficionado, and he's also an agoraphobe. He had been kidnapped as a child, and the agoraphobia was a result of that. But he has crazy computer skills, and he contributes them and his sizable trust fund to the Mosley and Associates activities.
Mm-hmm. And so he helped guide her to where he is.
Mm-hmm.
She finds him in another part of the big warehouse where he's been locked in, and she gets to him and gets him out safely.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, while Dawn has been beating old boys behind while she goes to find the boy, they also call the cops.
Yes.
So the cops arrive just as she is helping the little boy out of the warehouse. And that is when we meet the fourth member of our team, Lacey. And she has Lacey escort him over to the ambulance while the unofficial member of the team, who happens to be a cop, is introduced.
Trent.
And yes, Trent. So Lacey helps the kid over to the ambulance, and Officer Trent begins immediately berating her and Dawn because they could have ruined the entire case by beating that man's ass. And not waiting for the cops.
They don't care, not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit. They're like, well, look, you didn't beat his ass. We did. Completely different. It's not police brutality. He can't use you guys as the excuse.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we called the cops. It's not our fault you didn't get here at the same time as us.
Yes.
I mean, we may have timed it that way on purpose, but that's not the point. We called you. You arrested the dude. The rest is your job. You saw me get him out of there. The kid will talk. You'll be fine. Which, hilarious. But there's also clearly something going on between Trent and Gabby that is very much obvious on Trent's side, but not as obvious on hers. She's much more, I'm here about business. You're pretty, but that's fine. Focus. And so, we go through everything. We get to see them go back to the hospital, get the boy reunited with his family. It's a happy, beautiful moment. And then as Dawn has gone back to the office while Lacey and she had gone to the hospital with the little boy to make sure he was reunited with his family. And then as she and Lacey are leaving, they overhear the chief of police taking all the credit for everything.
Yes.
Because the police are the best of everything. And we're the ones who brought the kid home. We are heroes. Rah, rah, support your local police. Unfortunately, before he can get too far in his self-aggrandizing speech,
Yeah.
the media notices them sneaking on past.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not trying to hide themselves, but they're also not trying to draw attention to themselves.
Yeah.
And they get pulled over and they're like, oh my gosh, did you have to do with everything? And they're like, well, we're the ones who found him.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't matter who found him. What matters is that they found him. It's important that these cases get the attention they need. And they're like, uh-huh, yeah, cute, whatever. And she's like, or he's like trying to brush it off as like the police did their job. But she's like, who, like, she puts up a picture of a little cute, adorable little blonde girl. And so they're like, who is this? And everybody's like, oh, I know who that is. And they're like, of course you do. Her face has been plastered everywhere for the last 24 hours. The first 48 hours is the most important, and the attention is needed in order to find find missing people. And her, she being a high profile, pretty little blonde girl, she is plastered everywhere. Now, who is this? And it shows like an 8 or 9 year old pretty little black girl, and everybody goes silent. And then they're like, she's been gone for a week.
Right.
Y'all ain't saying nothing. Y'all don't remember she exists. This is why I do what I do to help find people who are missing, who you guys don't pay attention to. If you see this girl, please say something. And then they give their information. Meanwhile, while she's doing all of this with the press conference that the police chief tried to call, Gabby is doing a social media recording of everything that she's doing, showing the media and their reactions and everything that Gabby's showing, just to make sure and keep the attention where it needs to be and make them realize how important that kind of attention is to finding missing people. Then they get back to the place. They have their whole little celebration that they do when they succeed in closing a case, where they put the face of whoever they rescue up on the wall, and then they all cheers to the person who came home, and it's all cute little, dancey, supportive moment, adorableness.
They make the toast and say, welcome home.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's adorable and sweet and lovely, and they do it every time they save somebody.
Yes.
And so they got nearly a full wall at this point. Only room for a few more pictures, but they've been obviously pretty successful at what they're doing. There's room for something like 16 pictures. They've got like 11 up there at this point, something like that. It's a really cute moment. And then, they all start to meander off in their own directions. I think Trent makes another appearance briefly.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, and she brushes him off and then goes home. And she seems to be winding down, and it's like there's time left in the episode.
We forgot somebody.
Oh, when we're back and we're celebrating, that is when we meet the 5th member of the team, Margaret. Yes. I'm so sorry. Margaret is very clutch. Very clutch. This was charged to my head, not my heart, because love Margaret. Margaret's clutch. You'll learn more about Margaret after this, because in this part of the episode, we don't really get to know what Margaret's skill set is. So anyway, she goes home. She kind of winds down, and then we see her go into her basement. At a basement that has 3 locks on it.
And she's carrying down a tray of food.
Mm-hmm. And that is when we find the monster in her basement that she has chained up. Now, throughout the episode, we've had a few flashbacks to when she was kidnapped. And we find out that the person who kidnapped her was called Sir. And that is how we get to know all of the major players. It is epic and amazing, and a great way to do an introduction to like this entire experience.
And we find out that not only is she keeping him chained up in her basement, she is making him help her solve cases.
Mm-hmm.
Because since
He's
he was a kidnapper himself, he can get into the minds of the kidnappers and can
she's
help
using a
profile them.
monster to locate monsters.
Yes. And it is astounding. The dynamic between the two of them is, it really makes you question your own mental health.
The chemistry is stupid because there's
It's
no excuse for it.
None excuse, absolutely none excuse.
Especially
And I mean,
considering
Sir
this
is
man.
played by Mark Paul Gosselaar, and
So I mean,
he is
yeah.
a whole snack.
Ooh, has been his whole adult life,
and he just keeps
and so
getting better and better with age.
Like, the man does not know how to look unattractive.
Oh God.
But good for our eyes and good for him.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
stressful for our mental health, because this time he is playing a character that is very much repugnant.
Right.
He is very delusional, very opinionated, and he's puritanical in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also brilliant. There's a lot of facets to the character of Sir that unveil themselves as the season goes on. In the beginning, though, he is just a repugnant figure, and you find yourself questioning your sanity, because why do you find so much attraction in this creature? And even more, why do you find so much attraction in the interaction between Sir and Gabby?
Mm-hmm.
It blows the mind. It kind of forces you to consider the the nature of the human mind and our ability to compartmentalize, to some degree, and be able to try and find the good in even the worst individuals, to make an excuse for why it's okay to be attracted to them when you really should. Like, as the season goes on, we find out that this man groomed her, basically, or attempted to.
Well, see, I'm not. See, I don't. I don't think that's what it was. I don't think he was ever intending on them having a romantic relationship. Sir's psychology, and this isn't. I'm not excusing this monster in any way, shape, or form. His crimes were different, because his psychology is wanting a perfect family. We see the flashbacks with his mother and his brother and how he grew up later on, but it was never sexual with Gabby. That was never what that was when he wasn't grooming that. It was like he was grooming her as a daughter. He wanted her as a family member, and for them to be that kind of family. It never gave me that he was grooming her to be his romantic partner.
No, I'm not trying to say. I do believe that he was trying to groom her to be a member of his family. I think when she was younger, that there was no capacity within him to realize a sexual component there, because he saw too much of himself in there. He would never want to sully her, so to speak,
Right.
or make her dirty in that way. When she was a child, he saw her as a child, but
Right.
he was grooming her to be his perfect companion, which manifests itself in that, in his elder in their elder years, as they have now grown both into adulthood, there is a different dynamic to them than was there when she was a child. When she was still a teenage girl, it was very much like you said, older brother, younger sister, father, daughter. In their adulthood, the dynamic shifted.
Yeah, I don't see.
Completely.
We see the tension and stuff like that, but I don't think it's supposed to be there between them. That's somewhere where we disagree. I don't think that's how he sees her. No, I don't think it's there for him either. I still think
I think
he
it's there
sees
for
her.
him. I don't think that he's fully cognizant of it. That's my thing. I think that he has not completely grasped the fact that his perspective of her has changed. And so it's an unconscious thing. I
You
think
see,
that there could be a point at some point where he'll realize it, and that might be dangerous for her, because then she could become
yeah,
a
I
more
don't see
dangerous
that. I
figure.
think he still sees her as that person he wants, as his intellectual equal family companion. Yeah.
Yeah, and I see that as well. I'm not saying that that part is gone. I'm saying that maybe it's just Mark Paul Gosselaar is just too freaking hot to
That's the whole
not.
thing, is that he just oozes that. But
But I don't know. Maybe his natural bearing is making me see something that's not supposed to be there. Um, but it feels like
Sir
he
strikes me as
sees her.
completely asexual in his persona, as the
Okay,
antithesis to what his mother was.
and see here, I think psychologically he's asexual. I don't think biologically he's asexual. And there's a difference. Like, there are people who are genuinely asexual, and it's got nothing, like, there's just no urges for them. And then there's people who have psychological hangups that create asexuality in them. And I feel
Right.
like that's the difference here.
Right,
And
but
I
at this
feel
point
like,
it doesn't matter, because he's never going to heal from that. This man's never gonna, if it's caused by psychological hangups, he's never, at this point in his life, he's never gonna heal from it. You know.
I'm not saying that he would heal from him, but but everybody's psychology evolves over time. And with her being an adult woman, and her wanting adult female relationships, and him beginning to see her as an adult woman who might be
I know.
interested in those, I feel subconsciously that has caused a shift in his own psychology, and in how he sees their family having to be.
I
Now,
know, but
I don't think he recognized it.
he's
I don't
very,
think he sees it. I don't think it's a conscious thing. I
I
see it
don't think
as
it's there.
subconscious.
He's very, very,
And
very,
that's fine.
think about how he is when, he's wondering if
Mm-hmm.
Brent spent the night. He's furious that she would have sex with somebody. And it's not even about being a whore. He's very, 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 disgusted by any sex worker and stuff like that. But at the
Yeah.
mere hint of, sexual activity, and it's not as, it's just like, how could you do something like that? You know what I mean? It's like, it's repulsive to him, the idea of it.
No, I don't get repulsion. I
Oh, I do.
get jealousy. I get
He,
rage. I
I thought
get
he was jealous of.
distaste. I do get distaste. He finds it distasteful still, but that
I don't
doesn't,
think he
there's
was.
plenty of,
I think his jealousy was about an emotional connection they had, because he was talking about, I heard you guys up there talking. And he hated that she had that kind of relationship with somebody. That's when we saw his jealousy, was when he was talking about them talking.
okay, I guess time will tell
Yeah.
if he's completely asexual still, or if his psychology is shifted with her
Yeah.
age. But regardless, he is, as you can tell by our argument here, or not even argument, but our discussion here, he is an incredibly fascinating and intricate mind.
Oh,
And it
absolutely.
so and Mark Paul Gosselaar does an incredible job of portraying it and drawing you in. And the way his eyes feel empty, like how he can turn off the light in his eyes and just like
Mhm.
suck you in, like make
Yeah.
you believe that there is a monster who is always thirsting for more and always trying to take more from you, like that than you're willing to get. Like, the way that he is able to portray that is
Well,
phenomenal,
even
incredible.
chained up down in the basement, he still
Mhm.
plays a lot of mind games with her. He had her
The fact that
convinced.
he's rarely seems out of control, even
Mhm.
in such a situation, is wild and incredible. he manages to maintain a certain amount of autonomy and grace, and which is a
Mhm.
weird thing to say about freaking serial stalker.
And
Um,
it's crazy too, because like times where like she's mad at him, so she's punishing him the way he used to punish her. She'll say to him,
mhm,
he'll say to her, you can't just not feed me. And she'll be like, I'm just going by your rules. And he will mention it to her, but it's not like he's actually fighting with her, because it's like there's a part of him that likes that likes that commonality.
the more
And
that
when
he
he
feels that
picks
he
up
has
on it and
that
is like,
he
no,
is
I'm not you. Yeah.
he craves being an impact on her life. He
Yes.
craves being as important to her as she is to him.
Yes.
He needs that. He feeds on it.
Hmm.
And so when she shows these little things, he taunts her, but
Hmm.
she doesn't see it right away. She never sees it right away for the taunting that it is.
Right.
She thinks that he's trying to talk, like manipulate her out of it. Meanwhile, he's taunting her with the fact that you're just like me.
Right.
I've molded you. He likes to say things like, you need me. I'm your partner. I've
Right.
had more impact on your growth and development than your father. Things like that. He likes the idea that he is her ultimate teacher, her
Right.
ultimate guide, and that he is the key influence in her life and that no one else could ever compare.
Right.
Part of him that believes that to his core and wants her to acknowledge it.
And
Creepy bastard.
she's keeping him chained up down there. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
at one point, he says to her, because she wants to put an end to it all. And he says that if
Mm-hmm.
if she does it, he's going to kill Lacey,
Mm-hmm.
because he wants to be there, because he
And
gets to
that's when
stay
we
connected to
realize,
her.
because at first it seems like she really does have him captive,
Yeah.
in spite of his, ability to maintain a certain amount of autonomy and and
Hmm.
and control and self-possession. It seems like she has the upper hand for the most part,
Right.
until that moment where she looks into his eye after he threatens her with killing Lacey and
Yep.
says, you want to be here. And he gets real close and says, let me go and we'll find
Undo
out.
these
And
chains
it's
and
just,
find out. Yeah.
and the chills are full body. The chills
Hmm.
are full. I got chills on my fingers. It was
And
wild.
we find out through the series that everybody who works at Mosley and Associates has been touched by a kidnapping of
Mm-hmm.
sorts.
Either because they're
Right.
a former victim or because they are the parent of a victim.
Right.
Which
So,
brings us back to Mark, because we've kind of gotten a chance to touch on several other members of the case, but because the first episode didn't really get into her as much, we
mhm.
didn't really get into her. So Margaret is the mother of three. I think she had three kids.
3 children, two
And she was,
daughters and a son.
yes, two daughters and a son. She was at the bus station with her son, looked away for a moment. I guess they were waiting for someone to arrive. She
No,
looked
they
away
were
for a
going on a
moment.
trip together.
Oh, yes, she was going on a trip together.
Hmm.
She looked away for a moment. I guess she was knitting or something like that. She was doing something to, crossword. She was doing a crossword. She looked away. When she looked back, he was gone.
Right.
So, of course they did the manhunt, but they never found him.
And
And
it's
it's
been
been
13
years and
years.
years,
13
13 years.
years.
And
Margaret
she
spends every night
goes
at the bus station.
every night. And in that time, she has become hyper aware of her surroundings
Yes.
to the point where it's like a superpower. They even jokingly call it Margaret Vision, because
Right.
it's almost superhuman the way she is able to
Well,
pick
she's a
up
body
details.
language expert. She can
Yes,
pick up, on, what people are
body
saying without
language.
them saying it. And so she's invaluable for finding out,
Absolutely.
because, with this team, they're hired by families or groups to
Mhm.
try to find. So she's invaluable
Families,
picking
close
up
friends.
what they might not be telling them.
Yeah. I
But her
remember
thing
there was
is
one
that,
incident where they were the foster brother of one of the victims,
mhm,
who had gone missing. He's the one who came in and we're going to do it as a pro bono case because he's a foster kid. He has no money.
mhm,
Um, and his older foster sister, who had always looked out for him, always made sure that she kept an eye on him, suddenly went missing.
right.
Now, she would, go and take some time for herself at times when things would get hard, but she would never leave him behind.
Right.
So when she went missing for more than a day, he started freaking out and came to them for help.
Right.
Now, the story of how that all went down was amazing, but basically, I remember like when Margaret's superpower really clicked for me was when she went into the foster family's house, and it seemed like she was just glancing around. And when she came out, she was like, there's locks on all the doors on the outside, not the inside. She's not
Right.
keeping people out, they're keeping people in. And it's just like, holy crap. They flash back to her noticing it and how her brain
Mhm.
zooms in and catches all of these details. And then they're talking about how this person was fidgeting, which means they were lying or not telling the whole truth. And it's just like, wow, never would have clocked any of that.
And she's perfected this skill because she sits at the bus station all night, every night, searching the faces and the actions and the movements. And she has, age advanced pictures of her son. She's praying, she's looking for her son. But in the meantime, she has become an expert at reading people because that's what she does all night, every night. This
Mm-hmm.
led to the breakdown of her marriage and her estrangement from her other children.
Mm-hmm.
And her daughter shows up at one point and wants her to sign away her parental rights so she can get a scholarship. And Margaret does it, but she realizes she wants to try to have a relationship with her daughter and she wants to try to get better. So she's working with a therapist. We'll see
And
how.
this is probably one of the one times that I will praise Lacey in the entire existence of the show. Lacey, Lacey is the other half of the kidnapped victims of Sir. And Lacey was a younger girl at the time that Sir took her.
Mhm.
And she has grown up to become a lawyer because she wants to help Gabby be able
Well,
to
she's in law
do
school.
what she does. She's in law school, so she's working on becoming a lawyer,
Yes.
because she wants to be the legal assistance for Mosley and Associates because she knows that Gabby skirts the law a little heavy.
Mhm.
So she wants to make sure that they're able to do what they need to do without getting into legal trouble.
Yeah.
Now, in that particular instance, she sees the document that the daughter is asking her to sign, and she sneaks it before it can be signed and what have you. And she tries to talk the daughter out of it. And the daughter's like, she moved on from everything, so I just want to be able to move on too. And that's when Lacey oversteps, she often does, and lets her know she has not moved on from anything. She still goes to that bus station every night and has every night for 13 years
Yeah.
looking for your brother. She's
Yeah.
not moved on. She's not given up. She's not forgotten. She's just stuck in her grief.
Yeah.
And it makes her daughter be able to see her more as a human being
Right.
versus the mother who abandoned them.
Right.
And so she goes to see her there, and she's still Margaret is willing to sign the paper. She's like, no, 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 this is what you need for you to be able to have the future you deserve. I want that for you more than
Mhm.
anything. I need that for you. I'm not going to let anything take that away from you. And immediately signs paperwork.
Mhm.
And she's like, but then she sits there and she decides to stay with her mother. And she's like, I want to see what you do. I want to see
Mhm.
what you go through, what it's all about.
Yeah.
Because she wants to understand what has happened to her mother, what has become of her mother that she lost when they lost their brother.
And later on in the season, we hear about, her daughter reaching out to her, wanting her to come for the weekend to her college and stuff like that. So, they're working
Mhm.
on their relationship with this, which is great.
And yeah, she ends up going to a therapist who slowly is trying to help her let go of going to that bus stop, because a
Mhm.
lot of going to the bus stop is not even about finding him, because the likelihood of him ever making an appearance in that bus stop ever again,
Right.
after having been taken from there, is virtually nil.
Hmm.
But it's about her guilt and her
Right.
shame of her
Right.
failures as a mother, and all of
And
that wrapped up in her child being taken.
she brings her dinner to the bus stop every night in his lunchbox that he had with him that day,
Yeah.
and carries his backpack. And she's just very, very, she's working on it though. And they're all damaged.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Gabby and Lacey were kidnapped by Sir. Lacey changed her name.
Mm-hmm.
Her name was Bella. Um, and went to law school. And, she has all the locks on her door and security system, and a big vicious dog who, isn't vicious to her, obviously.
Yeah.
We have Dan, who was in the military and was taken, was a POW and was mistreated, and he was considered, he was missing in action and very, very damaged by it, and felt very betrayed
A lot of things.
by his, military co-people, platoon members. They haven't said what branch of the service he was in, but he feels very betrayed by them, that that he was left behind. And he is married to Ethan,
Which
who
broke my heart.
is
But it also made me
a
really happy because they love each other so much.
mental health
So cute.
professional. And he always wants us, he's always telling his husband not to shrink him, but he
Mhm.
can't help it. And of course,
Considering he used to be his strength, it's kind of surprising. It's not that surprising that he would
yeah,
habitually shrink him.
yes,
And so, from what we can tell, the two who are closest to the darkness are Gabby and Don.
yes,
The
absolutely.
rest of them are considerably more innocent, we'll
Yeah,
say. They have not taken the darkness that they experienced in their kidnappings or in their losses into
right.
themselves on the level that those two have. But then again, outside of possibly, let me see, which one did I say? Hmm, out, outside of our beloved hacker, I don't think any of the others experienced the same level of kidnapping as Gabby and Don for it to impact them in the same way. For instance, Lacey was like what, there for 2 weeks, and then they got out of there. So like it was traumatic, of course, but like
Well, the thing with Lacey too is that, Lacey had her mother who did everything she could to help her, and she had Gabby as a support system. Gabby really didn't. Her father had become an alcoholic and wasn't able to help
yeah,
her,
he'd already
and,
been struggling
not
with the
his
loss of
fault.
their mother.
Right. And her
He
mother
was
was already
struggling
dead.
to lose their mother, and then when Gabby went missing and they couldn't find her, he
Yeah.
struggled even further.
Right.
And that was a whole thread where she felt guilty for not
Right.
being there for him and not being able to help him.
Right.
But she also blames Sir for it because he since passed, and he passed before she could get to the hospital to see him.
Right.
And so there's a lot of sense of like she feels that she's to
Right.
blame, but she also feels that Sir's to blame because he took away her choice, and he kept trying to sever that tie
Right.
between her father, because her and her father, because he felt that her father
Right.
was abandoning her by not being there because he worked so many hours and he was so kind
And
of
I think
forgetful.
the thing with Dan as well is that he had, or Don, he had, it seems that he was like a special service, special ops kind of, he kind of already had a little bit of it in him,
Yeah.
And we find out that, he's the one who got Sir for Gabby.
Yeah.
But he located
and
Sir and delivered him unto Gabby, but he thought Gabby was just going to kill him.
Yeah. But then she found she couldn't.
Right. And Don was not happy when he found out she didn't.
At all. And especially considering throughout the season, we see them all beginning to heal from different pieces of their pain that they hadn't processed yet.
And they have formed a family and they're tightly bonded. And, Gabby has this incredible guilt because she's keeping this huge thing from them.
Yes. And she also knows that they're much more innocent people than she is. And so the way they're going to take it is not going to be as understanding as Don. Even Don had difficulty when he found out at first.
Oh, he was furious. And he was so mad that she had been having him help with cases. And, and then Trent risks his career.
Yeah.
And always concerned with
by the end of the season, he doesn't even know yet. He might be speculating that she's been in contact with him, but he doesn't even.
He's always worried every time there's a reported sighting, and he wants to check on her, and then towards the end of the season, they're on a case, and Gabby gets taken.
Yeah,
and they're frantic, and they can't find her.
And Don feels particularly guilty because
he was during Gabby.
He and Gabby got into it, and they were supposed to be checking out the site together. Like there was this rave party that they were looking for, clues about some missing girls.
Right.
And they were supposed to be checking out the party together, and she tried to talk to him, and he flipped on her and said, "We can check different sides of the party."
Right.
And
exactly.
While they were separated,
she got taken.
He got taken.
Right. And Don, in his desperation, goes to Sir in the basement
for
help finding Gabby. And Sir is frantic that Gabby's gone. And after Don leaves, Sir escapes because he's desperate to find Gabby.
Yeah. And he was going to find her himself if he had to.
Right. But Gabby gets found. And then they realize that Sir is gone.
And so
Gabby's like,
they continue keeping it a secret because they're trying to find him before, he can do anything. Right. And so they are in the midst of a major case. In fact, it was the same case that she brought up in episode 1 of the season as the girl who had been missing for a week. She's now been missing for months.
Right.
Because we're at the end of the season. And so that very same girl, they finally get a lead on. And so they have been hunting her while Don has been hunting Sir.
Right.
And
they have a lot more luck.
He gets a good lead that he's leaving the country. And so he comes back to try and help them finally find the girl. And they do. And in the end, they find the girl. And just as, they're about to take a breath of relief because Sir has escaped the country, which means that she doesn't have to go down for kidnapping him. And he'd already cleaned the basement where Sir had been to try and protect her. Don. Before he came back to the team, after he got rid of
any evidence, all the blood, everything gone.
So, but they're there, and then as they're looking at the case to put away the file, she notices blood on it. The same kind of blood that was all over the walls from him ripping himself free of his restraints to find her.
He had
letting
given
her
them
know
the hint that they needed.
that it was Sir who gave them the hint they needed to find this little girl.
Yes. And she knows.
Which lets her know that he didn't leave town and it was a false sighting, because he's never going to leave her.
And now she's worried. What is he? Is he going to do something to Lacey? Is he going to try to hurt somebody else? What is he? So,
which means she can't keep the secret. Like
right.
They were just going to take the secret to their grave. He's gone and he's left town. He's left the country. We'll keep an eye out for him to return. But if he's gone, then we're free. We're safe. But he's like, but then they find out that he was the one who dropped off the tip. That means that this could happen again and again and again with him dropping off tips, him wanting to be part of her world so bad that he is forcing himself in.
And if she doesn't let him in, is he going to try to, take out everybody else? So he's all she has. So
yeah,
he comes clean to the team.
He has to come clean to the team to let them know and warn them of what to expect.
And they are all very, 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 feel very betrayed and are very upset. And
devastated, freaked out, yes. Like shocked, awe, the whole thing.
And everybody goes home. And Gabby goes home and she
turns off his screen,
which he never does.
Off. Margaret like flinches away when she tries to reach for her. Like they're all freaking out, and then she just like breaks down and falls to the ground, and then Don slides to the floor with her because he's upset with her because I hate that, I knew that this was going to be the reaction because I had a similar reaction and I'm on the dark side.
Right.
More so with you. So I can understand it more than even they can. But, so he's devastated for her. Eventually they go home too. He goes home to his hubby and they finally make peace because when everything came down with the truth about Sir being in the basement, that had caused a rift with his husband because he was keeping secrets and he was freaking out because part of the reason she told him was because she expected him to get rid of the evidence. Quote.
But his husband says that he ordered them dinner and they're going to have a nice dinner together.
And so they're reconnecting, which is why it's beautiful and lovely. And I love them for them. And then, but
Zeke is getting his takeout because he always, or his delivery, his food delivered. He always does.
His food delivery has arrived and he's sitting there on the floor like, I think I need to eat, but I don't think I can eat. I just don't. I'm lost in the world. Because how is this person I put all of my stock in? I put all of my belief in. I put all of my healing in. Almost as much a monster as the people we always try to catch and save these people from.
Right.
In a sense. It's a lot to try and process. Meanwhile,
Margaret,
Margaret goes back to her
bus
safe
station,
space, which is the bus station,
and she has her little sandwich in her lunchbox, and just feels she has all of her comfort stuff.
But she seems to feel so empty, like just her face looks devastated, like she doesn't know what to do with any of it. Trent wasn't there, so he didn't have a part in any of this.
And Lacey goes home and she gets a call from her vet because she had earlier in the episode had talked about she had taken her dog to the vet because he was sick.
And they're like, I'm more careful what I feed you. And like, it's nothing that you fed them by accident. Somebody's been poisoning this dog on purpose.
Oh my God.
And so
we see Gabby
at home, and I don't know what it was that triggered her. I don't know if
it was a bloody fingerprint on her cabinet.
She opens the cabinet and she sees where she left the rat poison. It's missing because she kept some rat poison. At one point she had been considering rat poisoning Sir to death as a way to get rid of her problem and make this whole trauma stop. But she didn't. Well, she started to, but then she stopped feeding it to him in his meals and let him get better.
The rat poison, but he took the poison.
and
And
it's
she
missing,
panics and she's trying to call
and
Lacey.
Lacey's not answering because she's
She's mad at her
traumatized
and
and upset.
traumatized and betrayed.
Yeah.
And then we
And
see
so as we see Sir come out of her closet behind her, grinning and smirking because she refuses to answer the phone and instead puts it down and walks away, basically making herself an easy target. Because if she'd
and
answered the phone, she might have had a chance at getting help.
end credits.
And that is season 1.
And that is
In the
season
course of
one.
season 1, there are a lot of incredible stories that unfold of different
Mm-hmm.
missing people, types of missing people. You know,
Yep.
there was a child trafficking ring that was taken down. There was a little girl, the little girl from the beginning that we told you that finally got saved at the
Mm-hmm.
end. She was found out to have been being abused by her stepmother.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why her grandmother had been hiding her,
Mm-hmm.
because he thought it was both of them because the father had been abused similarly when he was a child. So when they brought it to them, they did nothing. And then when they brought it to a social worker, the social worker threatened her and said that if you keep doing that, you'll lose access. There's
Mm-hmm.
no credible threat. And then the girl goes missing. So they all thought, something was wrong, but it
Mm-hmm.
turns out that,
Yes.
the grandma had tried to send her away to protect her and then brought her back.
Right.
So
We
now the
also
grandma.
find out that because, there was a case that didn't have a happy ending. And we find out that at her home, Gabby has a room with a
Mm-hmm.
few pictures on the wall. And it's a memorial for the ones that they weren't able to bring home safely.
Mm-hmm. It's a much smaller number,
Yep,
but
there's
it's
only
still
a couple of them, and before the end of the season, they have to start another wall with
for all
the
the ones that
success
they
stories.
say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
In addition, we mentioned the little blonde girl. She ends up helping bring her home
hmm
inadvertently.
yeah.
Because it turns out, if you remember, we mentioned the story about a foster kid who came in
hmm
about his foster big sister. It turns out that foster big sister tried to save that little girl, so they both got kidnapped together.
Yes.
And when she was set free, she was wearing the girl's sweatshirt.
And they
And that's how
recognize
they figured out they'd been kidnapped together. So they managed to talk to the little girl and get some information and find out that it was because her big brother, was
it.
doing drugs and the dealer kidnapped the little girl as ransom.
Right.
So they were able to track her down, find her, and get her home safe. So there were a lot of great stories that happened, throughout the whole thing. We got to see there were 2 parts to the sex trafficking one. There was the first part where they tried to sex traffic one or human traffic one little boy, and they saved him. But then one of the other little boys was being groomed to help with the trafficking ring, got hurt.
Yep.
And then later on, we find out who was behind the whole trafficking ring to begin with.
Yes.
But yeah,
And they're
there's
able
all
to help
sorts of
them
great
too.
stories.
It's
There was
just,
a story about a transgender girl who was being stalked.
mhm.
Just a lot of incredible stories.
It really is. And it just really, it highlights marginalized communities and marginalized groups. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so well done. It's well written, well acted, just the whole thing. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
10 out of
And the
10,
great thing is, it's
five
not that they
stars.
don't take other types of cases.
Yeah.
It's just usually those cases get a lot more attention.
Mhm.
So they prioritize and are more likely to do pro
Right.
bono the
Right.
less attention getting
Mhm.
cases. For instance, they saved a pregnant woman and her child, who was in the in between area between the reservation and United States
Mhm. Yes.
territory.
Mhm.
And they taught a lot about they teach a lot about each of these groups that they end up working with, like about how that's considered no man's land, because if you cross the line into the reservation, it's not your territory, you get in trouble. But if you cross the line out of the reservation, you can get in trouble because that's not supposed to be, that's US government territory. So it's supposed to be handled by the city, the county, whatever.
Right.
It's on the other side of that. And so sometimes if you're in that no man's land, bad things can happen because of the fact that no one knows who has jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And we find out that the cabin in Virginia that Gabby was kept at was in
The
a
farmhouse.
similar no, the farmhouse.
It was actually it was close to there. He had actually purchased it because he knew that it was an area that wasn't policed. Yep.
Now, in addition to all the other things that come across this season, there is another character that pops up. Annie. Now, during her time in being kidnapped, she ended up finding in one of the books a little note from Annie saying that, you know, he held me captive here. And, you know, if you're reading this, know that I got out, you can too. Kind of just giving her hope and belief that she wasn't the first one he rescued. But because, you know, other circumstances happened, she thought he killed her. The girl Annie came back at some point and found her there with him. And, you know, she thought that the girl was going to go get help, but she didn't end up getting help. So she assumed that the girl died. Come to find out, she only died a couple years ago in a car accident.
Right. Yes. So Sir didn't kill her.
Nope. So at this point, as far as we know, he's not actively killed anyone.
Right.
He may have indirectly had a hand in the death of his mother, I believe. I think that was an accident.
They haven't even said that.
Oh yeah, sure. They haven't.
Yeah.
What happened to his mother?
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's
just that she died tragically.
Yes. And throughout this, we got flashbacks. We find out that he was Gabby's teacher and had taken a special interest in her because she was so smart, because she was so gifted. And that so sparked his interest. Exactly. He felt a commonality with her. And we also find out that his mother was a single mother, very promiscuous. He had a lot of responsibilities to take care of his baby brother at a very young age. She was abusive. And he had a neighbor.
But hyper protective of his little brother.
But he had a neighbor who took an interest in him, gave him a journal, and, you know, tried to feed him when his mother didn't and stuff. So I think more will come out about those sorts of things in season 2.
And ironically, she's a Black woman who looked an awful lot like an adult version of Gabby. Not the version that Gabby turned into, but like if you had just looked at that woman and Gabby, you would think that they could be the same person at different points in the same life scale, because they look on a similar scale. So this pretty little Black girl who reminded him of the neighbor who was the only person who tried to save him at a time when he was being beat down in every way, mentally, emotionally, and physically by his mother, and used books and his mind as the escape for him. And then he comes across this young mind who reminds him of himself, but also reminds him of her and her brilliance and her, you know, love of reading and what have you. And he quickly fixates on her.
Right. And how he lures her out to the farmhouse is he tells her he has a collection of first editions.
Which he does.
And he gets her out there and he basically, you know, locks her and keeps her and makes her. Yeah.
At first, he's giving her carte blanche to borrow whatever she wanted to borrow. And he was planning to take her back home.
I don't think he was.
She had a dinner. Like, I think consciously he thought he was.
No,
I don't think
he wanted her to choose to stay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Because consciously he wanted her to choose to stay, but he knew that there was a possibility that the first time around she wouldn't. So I don't think that he thought on that one instance that he was keeping her. I think that he brought her out there to see what life around him could be like, and that she might choose to want to stay with him and learn with him and grow with him, and that they could build a family, since her father always seemed to be missing from her major life events and late and what have you. And he felt like they could be kindred to each other. Anyway, he misunderstood one of the things that she wrote in her notebook, because she had a best friend with the same initials as him, and she had written that that person was her family, and he thought she was talking about him. So he had started to really glom on to the idea of her becoming a member of his family. And I don't think that he intended to take her consciously. Like, I felt like he thought that she was eventually going to choose him, and that this would be the first step towards that. Him letting her borrow his books, and continuing to cultivate the relationship. But then the mask started to slip. He started to push about parts of her life, boys that he thinks that were inappropriate and only want one thing from her. Her father, who's not there for her and can't support her like he can. And then the more she pushed back on everything he said, the more it messed with his fantasy. And that is when he snapped and decided, you can't leave me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I saw it differently. I don't think he ever intended to bring her back, because he had brought her all the way out to the farmhouse and not to, a location that was less, set up for kidnapping. But, we see things differently.
Yeah. Like I said, I think subconsciously he always planned to kidnap her. I think subconsciously he knew he would have to kidnap her. But I don't think consciously
I think he wanted her to choose to stay, but I think he knew he wasn't letting her out of there no matter what.
I don't think he knew that.
Oh, I do.
I don't think he knew that, because if he knew that, I think he would have set up for it better.
What do you mean? She was he had already bought the farmhouse, and it already had clothes and everything like that for her.
Yes, because he was planning to have her be part of his family, and he was planning for her to choose it. So he was preparing for when that happened. I don't think that he consciously realized that he was going to have to force her into it. So his idea was, let me create this happy situation.
Right, but he had
family, everything will be okay.
I know, but he had already set the house up to be inescapable.
I don't think he did it to be inescapable. I think he did it to be private and protected from other people being able to take her away from him. Like, I think the way he saw it going down, she was going to be so happy with him, she'd want to stay, but other people wouldn't understand, because he's a grown man and she's a young girl, and they would get the wrong idea, and we would have to hide and barricade ourselves from the world. But I think subconsciously,
he was able to barricade her in, Toni.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Subconsciously, he set it up for barricading, because of the fact that subconsciously he knew his fantasy was just a fantasy. Subconsciously, he knew he was going to have to keep her there another way. But consciously, he thought she would choose him, and everything would be easy.
Where you'd be getting subconsciously, though, because I didn't see anything that suggested that.
I don't know. Like, maybe we're just writing the scene differently then, because the way I felt when I was watching it, it felt like he just kept getting more and more confused. And then he was just like, I don't want to have to do this. And he was looking around like he didn't know how he was going to fix it. And then suddenly it just came upon him. But the thing is, he had it set up for that. So why would he be looking around in confusion if he knew that he was going to kidnap her?
I didn't see him looking around in confusion. I'll have to go back and rewatch that, because I didn't see that. Because as soon as she was like, I want to leave, he from my memory, he went immediately to the door and locked her and said she wasn't going anywhere. But okay, enough, you two. But anyway, that's season 1.
Yes, season 1 was phenomenal. A lot of phenomenal characters. They managed to, do callbacks from within the season. Turns out Annie escaped, and he threatened to tell her parents something that would get them to put her back into a mental institution. So she never went and got help for Gabby because she wanted her freedom more than she wanted to help Gabby. So, yeah. But we still don't know if he actually ever kidnapped her or if she just did those things on her own. Like, how did those notes get there in the first place? So that's something we still don't have any clarity on.
So we will be back with our recap of season 2, episode 1. And they'll be dropping every Friday night throughout this season. And we're really looking forward to this, and we hope you guys join us.
Yes. Yay. So this will now become a weekly thing. We appreciate you taking the time to engage with us. We have a YouTube channel that this will be on, but we'll also have a Patreon. Let's see. There we go. Yep. And they are still active, and this episode, as a specialty episode, will be free. But future weekly episodes may be behind the paywall. So the YouTube account is youtube.com/only one Toni. Nope, wrong one. Petty Prattle. Petty Prattle Pod. And then our Patreon is patreon.com/Petty Prattle Pod.
Yes. And you can go to pettyprattle.com for all of your soap opera and entertainment spoilers, news, recaps, all kinds of fun stuff. And you can find me and Toni both on Twitter. And we love to chat. Slide into our DMs. Hit us up. Any questions, requests, let us know.
My at is the only one Toni D. TheOnly, the number 1 and D. Oh, the only one Toni D.
And mine is Brooklyn74, BROOKELYNN 74.
And then, of course, we have our Petty Prattle account, as well as our Petty Prattle podcast account.
Yes.
So feel free to check us out. We love to engage with you. We're going to be shortly coming back with a few other podcasts in the near future.
Yes.
But for now, we have been found from the basement.
From the basement. Have a good night, everybody.
This has been Angela and Toni, your hosts. Have a great night.
Bye.